Have you ever wondered what would happen if you mixed World of Sport wrestling with Saturday Night Fever? Well, someone actually tried it, and the result is probably the weirdest match ever broadcast on British television. Hello everyone, I'm Josh Faulkner, the wrestling comedian. If you enjoy these stories from British wrestling's past, make sure you hit like and drop me a follow because there's plenty more to come. By late 1986, British wrestling was changing. For decades, joint promotions had effectively owned wrestling on ITV. Then Brian Dixon changed everything. After years of running all-star wrestling around Britain, Dixon finally landed what promoters had wanted for years: his own ITV television shows. It wasn't replacing the old World of Sport wrestling completely. Instead, ITV rotated programming between joint promotions, Brian Dixon's All-Star Wrestling, and even the WWF as British television searched for a fresh direction. Dixon knew this was the biggest opportunity of his career. He had one chance to prove his promotion deserved national television. Brian Dixon's first television taping came from Catford in South London, but for the first show broadcast, the venue was London's Hippodrome. Not exactly the kind of venue wrestling fans were used to. The Hippodrome, owned by Peter Stringfellow, was known for glitz, nightlife and entertainment. Brian Dixon wanted his wrestling to look modern. He wanted it flashy, different, American. It was a huge contrast to the traditional presentation fans had watched for decades. The card for this first broadcast was incredibly strong. Future legend Fuji Yamada, who would later become better known as Jushin Thunder Liger, made his British television debut. Mark Rollerball Rocco returned to ITV after years away from television, defeating longtime rival Chick Cullen in a typically outstanding contest that reminded everyone why Rocco was regarded as one of Britain's greatest wrestlers. But neither of those matches became the one people remembered, because Brian Dixon had something, well, different planned for the main event. Kendo Nagasaki had returned. Peter Thornley's comeback after years away from the spotlight was a genuine attraction. He was one of the biggest drawing cards British wrestling had ever produced. Standing opposite him was arguably one of Britain's finest technicians, Iron Fist Clive Myers. On paper, that sounds fantastic, but someone decided it needed a gimmick. A disco ladder match. You heard me right, a disco ladder match. The object hanging above the ring wasn't a championship belt. It was a gold record. The winner had to climb a ladder and retrieve it. So far, perfectly normal by today's standards, except this was Britain in 1986, long before ladder matches became mainstream. In fact, Britain had televised a ladder match years before WWF made the concept famous at WrestleMania 10 in 1994. The idea is widely believed to have been inspired by Nagasaki's experiences wrestling in Stampede Wrestling in Canada. Then came the disco. Halfway through the match, the lights suddenly went dark. Coloured spotlights started flashing. Music blasted around the Hippodrome. The television cameras even cut away from the wrestling to show the lighting technician operating the controls. It was absolute chaos. Fans could barely follow what was happening in the ring, and I'm sure Brian's wife, legendary female grappler Mitzi Muller, Judo Al Hayes, and Wayne Bridges were equally confused, sat wearing coats ringside because the venue was so cold. Watching it today feels less like wrestling and more like someone accidentally changed channels onto Top of the Pops halfway through a fight. But here's the really interesting part. For years, many people assumed Brian Dixon had deliberately booked the match this way, but Peter Thornley tells a very different story in his autobiography. According to Thornley, the flashing lights and music were never supposed to begin until the very end of the match, at the exact moment the winner retrieved the gold record. Instead, the production crew triggered everything around 40 seconds into the contest by mistake. The music continued for several minutes before stopping, only to start again later. The entire gimmick had effectively malfunctioned live in front of the cameras. Even with all the distractions, Clive Myers still managed one incredible moment. Near the finish, he climbed high up the ladder. Before it was pulled away beneath him, he crashed spectacularly onto the canvas. One of the nastiest ladder falls ever seen in British wrestling. Moments later, Kendo Nagasaki climbed the ladder and retrieved the gold record to win the match. Did the disco ladder match achieve what Brian Dixon wanted? Probably not. Most fans thought it was bizarre. Even many people involved later admitted it would have been better as a straightforward wrestling match. But here's the thing, people still talk about this match 40 years later. Thousands of wrestling matches have been forgotten. The disco ladder match never has. Looking back now, I actually admire Brian Dixon for trying something different. British wrestling was under enormous pressure. The WWF had Hulk Hogan, Saturday night's main event, Madison Square Garden, pyrotechnics. Meanwhile, Britain still had town halls and traditional rounds wrestling. Dixon knew something had to change. Maybe disco wasn't the answer, but at least he tried. The match is still on YouTube today, and if you've never seen it, trust me, you won't believe your eyes. If you've watched a disco ladder match, let me know in the comments. Was Brian Dixon a visionary who was simply ahead of his time, or was this the strangest match ever shown on British television? And if you want more wrestling stories, opinions, and laughs, you know what to do, and remember, I'll see you on the next one.